this episode. So this week, the name on the marquee has got to be Johnny Eblen, who this past weekend at the Kia Forum in Inglewood, California at Bellator 290, Bader versus Fedor 2. That's right. That was the main event. Johnny Eblen was in the co-main, and he is on our marquee. He defeated Anatoly Tokov by unanimous decision. The scorecards read 50-45, 49-46, and 49-46. And Eblen looked great defending his middleweight belt. Mark, let me throw it over to you first. What were your impressions of Johnny Eblen getting it done, defending his title?
Johnny Eblen is good at fighting. He knows it. Gegard and now Anatoly Tokov know it, and the world is starting to know it. He beat Anatoly Tokov clearly in this fight. I leaned Tokov's way in round 1, but it was already swinging by round 2, and it went how I thought it would, which is that as the fight went on, Eblen would find more and more success, particularly with the wrestling, and that's exactly what happened, and he completely nullified a very dangerous finisher in Tokov. He beat him everywhere the fight went. He had Tokov looking glacially slow, I thought, which may have been more of a Tokov thing. I don't know, but I thought he looked really slow in there at times. But Eblen is a hell of an athlete, and he is showing you with every fight how well-rounded he is. You really can't look past any part of his game. And he's the hottest name in Bellator at the moment. Not too long ago, it was AJ McKee, right? But now you have a lot of people who are talking about Johnny Eblen and talking about how he stacks up against the top 5 in the UFC. And his name is everywhere. This guy went from fighting Colin Huckbody a year ago to getting picked by people to beat UFC champions today. So this has been one hell of a rise for Johnny Eblen. And frankly, he deserves it because he's been great.
Omar, let's get you in here. What was your reaction to Johnny Eblen's big win this past weekend for Bellator 290?
Yeah, man, I'm sold on him. I was, the Gegard Mousasi was one of those, holy shit, and then you start thinking, well, I wonder if Gegard finally hit that age gap, whatever. But like Tokov is an absolute animal, and the pace that was in that fight, and I think that's where Johnny lives in that pace, and it kills people. It absolutely ruins people. And the one thing I was noticing too was even when they were, squaring off against each other and moving around and kind of feeling the movement out of each other, I noticed Tokov kind of trying to copy or ends up mimicking the pace that Johnny Eblen was also trying to put on him, just in the feints and the movement and things like that. Mm-hmm. A lot of times that's not a great thing to do because you end up falling into their rhythm, which is kind of the opposite of really what you'd like to do, right? You want to create your own rhythm. You want your rhythm to take over. And a lot of times guys will actually go slower sometimes, and you'll see fighters kind of mimic that slowness and go, it's a weird little thing. But in this case, Eblen was able to speed up, feinting forward, moving, you know what I mean? And Tokov was mimicking a lot of that, but he looked so much more uncomfortable doing so. And I think over time, he just got dragged into deeper and deeper waters as it went through. And Eblen's ability to keep up the pace for 5 rounds like that is terrifying. And I think that's what makes him, I think that's where the conversation really comes into play. Because if you ask me today, do I think Adesanya beats Eblen? I'd say there's an argument to be made that Eblen outworks Adesanya. I can't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if Adesanya could definitely catch him because Eblen definitely gets touched. But the work rate and the success that Eblen has doing what he does and playing that game is crazy. He's very, very good, man. And I do think right now it would be a disservice to the middleweights of the world to not put Eblen at the top of the heap and really start talking about where he would stack up.
Mark, where do you... Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. No, you go ahead. I think you're going to say it.
I was going to change the subject to where do these guys go from here?
I was just going to say about Eblen. I'm comfortable with having him mentioned of, like, could he hang with the UFC's top 5? I'm not ready to come out and say, like, I think he'd beat Izzy, I think he'd beat Pereira, so on and so on. I get it, but especially with Pereira, I get it, the way the matchup is, that he could potentially take down Pereira over and over again. If he beats Gegard again and looks as good, I think maybe I'll start to be more open to it, but I need a little more than 2 fights to get there. But the fact that he has even put himself in these type of conversations through really only 2 fights is pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's the performances. It's the quality of the performances. This is not like, for example, the Danny Sabatello fight, right? Where you kind of laid on Rafion Stotts for a majority of that fight, didn't really do too much. We kind of argued about control versus damage, and we had a whole back and forth about it. That's not the game of Johnny Eblen. Johnny Eblen is forward, forward, forward. If he takes you down, he's trying to crack you. He's trying to move forward. He's trying to advance. Like, Johnny Eblen is like, for lack of a better term, he really is like an Energizer Bunny.
Yeah.
He's continuously moving. And again, these things Pereira could absolutely knock out Johnny Eblen. Like I'm not delusional, right? Like if Johnny Eblen gets touched by Alex Pereira on that chin, he can go down 100%. But there's also a world where I do believe Johnny Eblen could get in on a leg, take him down, and work that pressure. I mean, we've seen Pereira gas later on into the round. I've yet to see Johnny Eblen gas, literally.
Yeah, and you could tell looking at Tokov coming out for the 5th round.
He was done.
He was
done.
There's nothing I can do right now. I'm just going to go out here and get outworked for 5 more minutes. Like, that's literally what was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could see the change in demeanor, too, as the fight went on. Because if we're being honest, man, Tokov, there were a lot of... I think the exchanges that get in a fighter's heads are the ones where they think they're going to get it, and then they don't. Mm-hmm. And it continuously fucks with them over time, especially for somebody like Eblen, where I feel like Tokov in a normal situation, his explosions, his rolls to get out of bad situations probably work like 98% of the time. And then here comes this fucking guy who can stop that. And so now all of the things that Tokov relies on, all the different escapes that he's comfortable with, the explosion that his muscles usually afford him, all of that stuff, Eblen is now countering. And so it's like, dude, like what do I have to do? What can I do? And after 3-4 rounds, you're talking 20 minutes of the bullshit. It wears, man. It absolutely wears. And the gas tank doesn't get any better from there.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Let's talk about where these guys go from here. Mark, let's start with the loser, Anatoly Tokov. Where does he go from here?
I think you throw him and John Salter in there. Again, we've had this conversation before. Bellator's middleweight division is not terribly deep. There are some more names who are sort of popping up at this point now. But still, I feel like it's kind of accepted that John Salter is like that next guy aside from these two and Gegard. Mm-hmm. And we have not seen Tokov and John Salter matched up, so I think that's where I would go with him.
Okay. Omar, let me throw it over to you. What is next for Johnny Eblen looking at the landscape of the Bellator middleweight division?
I think those, like I usually talk about when it comes to Bellator, there's not, I feel like, a ton of room for interpretation with things. Mm-hmm. I mean, Eblen at this point, that was what, his first title defense now?
Correct.
Right? Yeah. And so for me, like Mark was talking about, I think the Gegard Mousasi thing, even though I know he went with John Salter, but the Gegard Mousasi thing, I think, is one that I still want to see again. I do want to see if he can put that performance on again, because the first performance was dominant, and it wasn't even one of those, wow, I can't believe he did it. It was like, holy shit, I can't believe that's how he beat Gegard Mousasi.
Yeah, to be clear, I thought you asked me for Tokov. I was saying Salter for Tokov.
Oh, I was
asking,
talking about Eblen.
I asked you about Tokov. I asked him about Eblen.
Yeah, okay. Because Omar said I picked Salter for Eblen, but that's not what I would do for Eblen. I agree with Omar for Eblen.
Yes.
Mousasi is booked against Fabian Edwards. I want to say in like April or something around there. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm assuming they're probably looking at that as a number one contender fight. Edwards is a bit random, but he just beat Machida, so I guess he's kind of rising at this point. So my guess is whoever wins that fight probably gets Eblen, but I would think it's going to be that would be another shock if Gegard ever lost that one. So I would hope we're going to be looking at Eblen and Gegard too here in the somewhat near future.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else before we move on? Okay. In the main event of Bellator 290, Ryan Bader defeated Fedor Emelianenko by round 1 TKO, defending his Bellator heavyweight title. Omar, let me start with you. What was your reaction to Bader's performance and Fedor's final performance?
When we talked about this last week, I told you I had problems with Fedor's guard, or lack thereof. And I said if he doesn't keep up some kind of guard, if he continues this like old man pawing stance, he's gonna get knocked out. And that's pretty much what happened. And he allows himself to get touched. And I think he's either used to countering, being able to slip and counter, or being able to get his hands up faster than he used to. But like, it just doesn't work for him. And I'm glad we finally get to the point now where he's retired. But it was sad. It was sad to watch. It was sad to see him kind of go out again in an uncompetitive fashion. Yeah, that was balls.
Yeah, man. Mark, you want to weigh in?
Look, did Ryan Bader do a good job and finish Fedor and defend his title? Yes, sure. So props to Bader and all that. Sure. But this fucking sucked. It's one thing to watch a legend get taken out in his final fight, but to watch a legend get taken out when you can't even feel like he got a fair shake, that fucking blows, and that's how I felt. Now, Bader was looking like the better fighter. Like, the speed on the feet was a problem for Fedor right away. You could tell from Fedor. But he knocks Fedor down with a punch to the back of the head, clearly to the back of the head. And like, all right, it's MMA. We're moving around. These things happen sometimes. What can you do? Okay. Then we're on the ground. Fedor's doing a pretty good job of surviving and kind of making sure Bader can't wail on him. And who knows what would have happened if he could have got out or not. But, you know, like, did he still have a chance to win? Yeah, maybe he did. But the way Bader finally breaks through for a finish is by landing somewhere between like 8 and 10 shots to the back of Fedor's head. And Herb Dean is just like, word, yeah, oh, okay. He's got some more. Okay, yep, that's it, Fedor. Nice career, man. Sorry that it's over. Like, can we at least give the guy some chance without him having to eat repeated shots to the back of the head to have a fight stopped? Like, that shit sucked all the way around. You know, again, like I said, we've seen plenty of legends go out where it's like, all right, he's old. He kind of got run through. And maybe he would have. But, like, at least let me feel like he got a fair chance in there without eating 8 straight punches to the back of his head to have a fight ended.
Agreed. It was not a great look for everybody. It would have been nice if Bader didn't hit him in the back of the head. He could have just not done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, Fedor was getting up from having been knocked down or put down or taken down or something. He was on the ground and he tried to come back up.
Knocked down.
And the way he got up, frankly, was kind of irresponsible. Now, should he have hit him to the back of the head? No, but like fucking Fedor shouldn't have been turned away really either. And I'm pretty sure Bader tried to hit him with a 1-2. So the first one wasn't really to the back of the head. The second one, however, considering he was still trying to like go the other way, hit him to the back of the head. So I can see an argument both ways. The one on the ground, I'm not going to argue with because...
Yeah, that's what I said. The standing ones happened. Fedor kind of tried to escape. Bader tried to chase him with it. It landed in the back of his head.
Yeah.
But the ground was just repeated over and he couldn't get through with the elbows to the face and then what he was trying to do. And he just switched to the back of the head and no one fucking stopped him.
Yeah. I mean, you think there was a chance that Herb Dean thought that those blows landed sort of on the corner? Or the
I don't know, man. I rewatched it to see, and I was like, they look pretty bad. Like, I don't know. What did you think so, Mike?
I mean, I just feel like the ref in that position, he probably gives the guy on top sort of the benefit of the doubt because it's such a dominant position, maybe.
I
mean, you gotta
went
see
to
what's
Twitter
going
right
on,
after
though.
and I typed Fedor back of head because I was curious if I was like the only person saying this, and there was a lot of people saying it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It was a weird one.
So what's next? We obviously know that Fedor retired. That was his last fight. That was his farewell fight.
Oh yeah, no, this motherfucker is wild. Wait a minute.
You're watching it?
Yeah,
Bro, it's so many.
it's almost like he'll throw like 3 or 4 to the back of the head, and then he'll sneak a couple into his face and be like,
Yes.
"Oh no, we're good here," and then no, he goes back to the
The
back
only
of the
way
head.
he opened up the clean shots was with the back of the head shots.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
I don't even think I noticed that when I watched it. I think I was
Yeah,
in
dude.
such a rush.
Well,
So sorry, you said where's Bader going to go from here?
yeah. What's next for Bader, especially in the heavyweight picture here?
So they got a rematch booked from, at least a couple years back between Linton Vassell and Valentin Moldavsky. Those are kind of the top guys. Obviously, Moldavsky recently fought Ryan Bader, close fight that Bader won. Linton Vassell also has fought Bader in the past, back when they were both light heavyweights, but he has been lighting it up since he's moved to heavyweight. So, yeah, him and Moldavsky are booked, and I got to think the winner of that is going to get their rematch with Ryan Bader for the belt.
Nice. Omar, what about you? Any other thoughts?
No, I like to let Mark do the Bellator stuff.
Well, boys, let us pause and take a moment and reflect on the career of the great Fedor Emelianenko. Who would like to begin?
I'm going to go in, so
Yeah.
Give us
I don't know
the
if you want to be
eulogy.
after that or before that.
I guess I'll go real quick because I'm not going to spend too much time. Fedor was one of those OGs, one of the Pride guys. Kind of when you think about him, you think of Pride, and I think like Shogun. I think he was a monster of a dude. He did like to stomp people out. He wasn't too much of a soccer kicker as much as I remember, but he definitely did like a good stomping. So he was fun to watch, man. And I think the thing that was fun about him was he was always fighting guys that were bigger than him, and he was always kind of ragdolling a lot of them, knocking guys out, doing really crazy shit, being the guy that was smaller. And a lot of his fights were great to watch, and he had a crazy run, a real wild run. And it kind of culminated once he got to really towards the end of his career, but he was still competitive all the way up until these last 2 Ryan Bader fights. And it's, I'm glad to see him go at this point. I don't think he's been the same Fedor for a minute now. But the memories that man has had, the videos and the clips and all the fights that he's had are legendary, and they're a part of the MMA history forever.
Yeah, man. I feel like people are going to think of Fedor as maybe bigger than he was. Like, I think people forget just how much of a sort of undersized heavyweight he was. He stood at only 6 feet even and fought at around 235, 240, which is not massive for a heavyweight by any stretch, and yet he had this aura about him. He fought with this sort of like force field of invincibility. He just had so much power, incredible hand speed. When you watch his old highlights of when he was really in his prime, man, he just presented so much danger to all of his opponents at pretty much every moment of every fight that he was in. He was good everywhere. He was proficient on the ground. Clearly was like a master on the feet with the strikes. He finished his career with 40 wins and only 7 defeats. That's right. He had 40 victories, and he did not even have double-digit losses. Just incredible stuff, man. So thanks for all the memories with Fedor. I mean, a lot of those memories are sort of a little bit in the deep past now, because even though he's just retiring now in 2023, a lot of his most classic moments were from quite a few years ago. So luckily we have the internet and we can go back and watch his highlights. So I wish him the absolute best in a career, and he's already 46 years old, so a much deserved rest is coming up for Fedor.
So I will talk about the resume of Fedor for a minute here. This man is my heavyweight GOAT. I will argue that I sometimes feel a duty on this show to make sure people understand how good guys of the past were. I have no idea what our age bracket of listeners is. Could be people who are older than us. Could be people our age. Could be a lot of kids. I don't know what it is, but for anyone who may not be super familiar with Fedor and some other guys that I've kind of done this about, I feel the need to make people understand how good these guys were. So this guy is my heavyweight GOAT. I hear a lot of modern takes of like, oh, he never came to the UFC, or like even more stupid takes of like, oh, but who was he really fighting? Just because they know he wasn't in the UFC, so they assume he's not fighting the same level of competition. And I think a lot of people don't realize that for the entire time Fedor was in Pride, Pride was the A-League. Like the best fighters in the world at that time were in Pride, and Fedor was the guy. And if we remove the one fluky loss from a cut early in his career, the man was still unbeaten 10 years in over 32 fights. 10 years and 32 fights without a loss. When he came to Strikeforce, he was already 30-plus fights in without a real loss, and he was already 33 years old. Like, Stipe is 20-4 today. Cain Velasquez in his whole career was 14-3. Brock Lesnar, who people used to compare to Fedor, is 5-3. Fedor went 32 fights without a loss. Like, the resume is unmatched, and he beat all the top heavyweights of his time for the most part. He, Mark Coleman and Kevin Randleman, admittedly, were a little before Fedor's time. They were UFC champions. They went over to Pride. He beat them. Antonio Nogueira, Big Nog, who couldn't be beat at the time. Fedor beat him twice. Mirko Cro Cop came along, beating everyone, gets all the buzz as the new Pride King. Fedor beat him. And then for all the, he never came to the UFC guys, the main people who were the UFC heavyweight champion during Fedor's run in Pride, kind of hot potatoing that UFC belt, were Randy Couture, Tim Sylvia, and Andrei Arlovsky. As soon as Pride ended, Fedor came to Affliction and fought both Tim Sylvia and Andrei Arlovsky, each of them only like a year or two removed from being the UFC champion. And he finished them in under 4 minutes combined. Then Nogueira went ahead and joined the UFC and became heavyweight champion, the guy who Fedor had already beat twice. So the argument that people make of like, oh, but did he fight everyone? Was he fighting the best? Who was the champion in the UFC at the time? He beat everyone. The only person he didn't fight is Randy Couture, which was supposed to happen at one point. It kind of slipped away. And I guess Josh Barnett at that time, too, was another top guy who he never ended up fighting. But if you want to do a little MMA math just for the hell of it, Josh Barnett beat Randy Couture. And then Cro Cop beat Josh Barnett. And Fedor beat Cro Cop. So we could use that if you want. And then now we've covered the bases of every heavyweight in the entire era. So to me, it's really tough to argue that anyone but Fedor is the heavyweight GOAT. Did things start to go downhill a bit around age 34? Yeah, sure. Did he keep fighting until he was 46 and knock out Tim Johnson, who was ranked like 15 in the world at the time? Also, yes. Like, the guy is the man. He is one of the most legendary fighters there ever was. From his highlights to the walkout music to his whole persona, the blank stare, the calmness, the stoic nature. Never said a bad word about anyone. He was unique in MMA. He almost felt like mythical in a way, and he is beloved by anyone he's ever fought. Basically, you saw all these guys in the cage with him on Saturday night, and I think it's fitting that he was the last one of all the Pride legends to officially call it a career, because he was Pride.
Very nice. Very nice.
He was,
Thank
man.
I will have to reiterate that this is kind of what I mean about Scott Coker having a certain level of respect for the fighters, because you would never see that in the UFC.
No.
Like, getting all those older fighters all together, kind of center staging, almost where MMA kind of grew from. Like, what we have now comes from a lot of the work of all of those men that you saw there, from the earliest Silver Age or Bronze Age, even all the way through to the Golden Age. You have a lot of great fighters that were on that, in that little picture there. That was
For sure.
like almost like a retirement moment for.
How about Chael in
Fedor.
there? My man looked a little out of place with all those greats. He snuck his way in.
How dare you? How dare you?
he never
Chael
lost
is
a
one
round,
of the
though.
greatest fighters of all time.
Who are you talking about?
Chael.
Chael,
Oh, Chael Sonnen. Yeah.
the gangster
Yeah,
son, and the
snuck
what
his
is it,
way
the
into
American
it.
gangster?
But no, I agree. The UFC does not do a great job of acknowledging history or celebrating it or giving nods to the greats, and that was awesome to see.
Hashtag Anderson Silva justice.
Boy, oh boy. All right, let's get back on this train with this episode. Let's switch over to UFC Fight Night from this past.
No.
Whoa,
We got
whoa,
one more
whoa,
Bellator,
whoa.
Oh, my
baby.
bad, my
Don't you
bad.
dare skip
Oh,
it.
man.
It was the best fight of the weekend.
Best
I
fight of
think.
I was gonna say this is the best fucking fight of the whole weekend.
My apologies, and I picked this fucking fight.
Oh, this fight was
Did
fucking
I say
great.
round 2 for Brennan Ward? I might have.
I believe I did. I'm not sure if who else did.
I know I took Brennan Ward, but I forget
Yeah.
what round. Okay, Brennan Ward. In the welterweight division of Bellator, he TKO'd Sabah Homasi at 1 minute 34 seconds of round number 2 with a head kick followed up by punches. It was an incredible finish, incredible fight overall, and a great win for Brennan Ward. What a story, comeback story. Brennan Ward battled years and years of drug addiction and in and out of rehabs, I believe. And to be the Bellator welterweight stud that he is now, simply incredible stuff. Mark, let me throw it over to you first. Give us your take on Brennan Ward getting this great win.
So this fight starts, and Sabah Homasi is legit picking Brennan Ward apart, like to pieces. I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh, shit, like, Brennan Ward can't hang. I can't believe this is how this is going. Homasi is just ripping his legs apart. Ward is taking damage. He's bleeding. He's falling over on leg kicks. But he just keeps getting up. He keeps walking forward, getting up, walking forward. And next thing you know, he's got a takedown. He's got a back take. And yes, Sabah's fine, but now the cardio is getting brought into play a little bit. Survives the round. Round 2 starts. Ward's walking forward. He's pushing it. And all of a sudden, Sabah starts to look like he needs a breath in there. And then when that's happening, his striking isn't so far ahead anymore. And next thing you know, again, Ward is landing, and Ward isn't stopping, and he keeps coming. And before you know it, Sabah Homasi is just entirely overwhelmed by the relentlessness of Brennan Ward. So that was awesome. It was a Brennan Ward performance, if there ever was one. It literally encapsulates the fighter that Brennan Ward is. And to see him be at such a disadvantage for the first 2 to 3 minutes of that fight and turn it around as quickly as he did, just through sheer will and pressure and doggedness, was friggin' awesome. And that is a big win for him in this second Bellator run that he's having now.
Omar, give us your take of Brennan Ward looking great in this Bellator welterweight win.
They both look great. Sabah Homasi looked fucking amazing.
He did too.
I mean, how many flying knees did he fucking land directly on his face? 3? I mean, Brennan Ward went through hell in that first round because Sabah Homasi hit him with everything. And most men, I would imagine, would have gone down from a lot of those shots. And Sabah Homasi's good, man. Sabah Homasi reversed him a few times on the ground as well when Brennan Ward was going for takedowns. Like, he's good. But the pace, I think the pace for both of them was insane. And I think once the round ended and I think they had a chance to take a breath, I think that's when Homasi's kind of body kind of gave out on him because he stopped. They were going at such a red line that once he stopped, I don't think he could go back up again. And you could see, even from the beginning of the round, Homasi was taking big, deep breaths because he was done. And in his credit, man, he kept fighting. He kept, trying to throw big shots and counter where he could find it, but his body wasn't reacting the same way. At one point, he threw a knee, completely lost balance, went on the floor, and had zero energy to get back up and just kind of accepted a takedown and a loss of position. By that second round, man, Homasi was just trying to survive, and Brennan Ward smelled the blood in the water and came for his head and left with it. It was a great performance, a great fight. To be honest, at this point, February 8th, 2023, that might be my fight of the year so far. That was a nasty fight.
Mark, what's next for these gentlemen? Let's do Brennan Ward first this time.
So my answer here is kind of tied to another fighter who fought and won on this card. We're not going to have time to go through all the Bellator prelims. We got a lot to do on this show, but there were some noteworthy prelims, so you could definitely check a few of those out. And one was Lorenz Larkin. This man slept the undefeated Muhammad Berhamov with an elbow in round 1. And I really would love to see Lorenz Larkin get a shot at Michael Venom Page, like very badly. I don't know what Page is up to, though, so if that is not going to happen, my answer would be to sign me up for Lorenz Larkin and Brennan Ward, because I think that is a hell of a scrap.
Sex.